today I'm going to talk about a true classic sci-fi board game, Imperium, Empires in Conflict, Worlds in the Balance, by Game Designers Workshop, GDW in 1977. If you're looking for to introduce more modern gamers to a classic sci-fi board game, this would definitely be one to think about. And as usual, subscriptions are appreciated. So the theme is shown in back. To the empire which has ruled the stars of this spiral arm, the Terrans are the new barbarians, beating at the gates and vandalizing civilization. A vast interstellar empire already surrounds the Terran space, and the imperial governor nearest Earth seeks to gain territory, for victory will advance his career. Terra struggles to merely survive, husbanding strength for later expansion. Each player has distinct goals and strengths, and must apply them strategically through the course of the game in order to achieve ultimate victory. 3-color mounted game board showing the stellar neighborhood of Sol to a range of 15 parsecs. Detailed, well-balanced game. Can be played in average 3 to 5 hours. Difficulty level is average to moderate. It's recommended 12 to adult. And it's a 2-player game. The cover art is definitely evocative of the early sci-fi games. I think it's very well done. In later GDW games, they give us maybe more kind of subtle, maybe realistic looking depictions, but I do like it. It's definitely evokes what's going on here. Shows various opposing craft. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good for its time. As far as components, first of all, a 12-page rule book. It's got a lot of information there. It's a little bit verbose, but we'll kind of walk you through that. And given all the kind of strategic tactical subtleties, it's captured well, I think. And then there's 2 of these cardstock player aids with various combat tables, and this is useful. It has a nice aid to talk about the counters. We'll show this in place, so 2 copies of that. And this is the first edition. There was another one that came out, the second edition, which has a bit of a different cover, but this is the first edition. It doesn't have a tray, but as often is the case, I use trays to hold the counters. And it's a GMT tray, fits well in the box. Comes a nice sharp edged dice, one of those. Good mix of counters. And they're good size counters too. They're kind of similar in size to what you'd see in like GMT Space Empires. They're a little bit bigger than the standard 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch counters, and I found that they're much better if you clip and kind of around the edges like I did. Definitely recommend that. It cleans them up pretty nice. And once they're clipped, they look really nice. Here are the unique counters, of which there are several. And again, we have this useful player aid that kind of shows you the meanings of them. It's a good reference. First of all, a couple kind of documentation counters. These are 1s and 10 digits for resources. And the Imperium is red generally, and Terrans are blue. And a turn record marker. War and Peace indicator, glory tracker for the Imperium. These are Imperial symbols. So there's color coding, and then of course generally there's numbers and also color coding of the symbols within to differentiate. So these are world markers for the Imperium, an outpost for the Imperium. And these are world markers for the Terrans and outpost marker for the Terrans. Planetary defenses are blue with white for the Terrans and red with white for the Imperium. There's regular troops. These are planetary defense. Jump troops for the Terrans. And these indicators are the combat factors. Planetary defense for the Terrans and the Imperial. Again, the combat factors. And then these indicators give further information of the type of ships. So these are fighters, and it's beam factor, missile factor, and screen factor, and that format will be used for the others as well. Tanker, and beam, missile, screen. TR, which I believe is transport. They say T on the rules, but I believe it's a transport. Mothership, missile boat, strike cruiser, a couple different types. Destroyer, light cruiser, heavy cruiser, dreadnought, battleship, fighter, monitor, missile, mothership, transport, tanker, scout, destroyer, light cruiser, strike cruiser, dreadnought, heavy cruiser, another dreadnought. It's an improved dreadnought. CA. So here's the map. It's a board mounted. It's about 19 by 24, 25 inches. It's got the information you need on here. It's got some indicators of what the hexes are. Have a guide there. Indicator of whether it's war or peace between the Imperium and Terrans. Turn record chart. Red is for Imperial, green is for Terran. Resource units. You track your resource units for Imperial, Terran, and you can also then track the glory points also in these for the Imperium. As far as on the map itself, there's stellar systems which are indicated by stars, and so a hex that has a star is a stellar hex. Each hex is 1/2 parsec of about 1.67 light years across. So Sol is centered around the middle, and then it's the parsecs outside of Sol. Do you have some binary stellar systems? And then for systems that have habitable worlds, you have the indicated by primary systems, which are these white boxes. These represent the surfaces of the planets in the systems. So these are habitable worlds. Secondary systems are not habitable, and so those indicated by the red ones. Secondary systems are indicated by the red squares, and that indicates they're not habitable worlds, but they have a planet there. The green are the jump lines, so you can either go across by hexes, one per turn, or then go on these jump lines. The map is well done. It's Maybe not as kind of subtle in the design as modern games, but you have the information there, so it should work out well. Going through the rules. A single game involves a single war. A campaign consists of several wars and ends only with conquesting the entire star map. While a war may be fought in an evening, a campaign is fought over the course of several weeks. Sequence of play. Imperium is played in turns. Each game turn represents the passage of 2 standard Terran years. In the first game, the Terran player moves first. The game turn and player turn sequence given below indicates that the Terran player turn occurs first. In following games, loser of the previous war moves first. 2 player turns constitute a game turn. The specific sequence of phases and subphases is as follows. Terran player turn, Terran maintenance and production, Terran first movement, Terran first combat, space combat, planetary surface, space interaction subphase, surface combat. Imperial reaction movement phase, Imperial reaction combat phase, space combat, planetary surface space interaction, surface combat, Terran second movement phase, Terran second combat phase, space combat, planetary surface space interaction, surface combat subphase. Imperial player turn. Imperial maintenance production phase, Imperial first movement phase, Imperial first combat phase, space combat, planetary surface space interaction, surface combat, Terran reaction movement phase, Terran reaction combat phase, space combat, planetary surface space interaction, surface combat, Imperial second movement phase, Imperial second combat phase, space combat, planetary surface space interaction, surface combat. Movement. Various forces may be moved from location to location under their own power or by some other ships. Starships may, depending on specific capabilities, move through space at just below light speed using sublight movement, or may use hyperspace jumps on jump roads. Fighters and missile boats, due to small size and endurance, may not use sublight movement. Fighters and monitors, due to the lack of hyperspace drives, may not make hyperspace jumps. Troops, outposts, planetary defenses, and fighters may be transported from location to location in transport ships. Monitors, all Earth ships except fighters, and world markers may not be transported. Sublight movement involves interstellar cruising at speeds approaching 80 to 90% speed of light. In game terms, this expresses movement of 1 per hex per game turn, executed during the owning player's first movement phase. Sublight movement is slow. It is used primarily by starships, monitors, unable to make hyperspace jumps, or by starships forced to venture off jump routes due to strategy or combat. Hyperspace jumps involve movement directly between stellar hexes at fast and light speeds. Such jumps are possible only along jump routes printed on the board. Each jump route is a green line connecting 2 stellar hexes. In game turns, each hyperspace jump expresses movement from 1 stellar hex to another stellar hex along a jump route. Jumps may be made in the owning player's first and second movement phase and the owning player's reaction movement phase. A jump must be from stellar hex to stellar hex. It may not begin or end in a portion of the jump route lying between the ends. Each player is allowed an unlimited number of hyperspace jumps during each of his movement phases. Each of the player's ships may continue making hyperspace jumps until a hex containing 1 more enemy starships is entered. The moving ships must then stop and attack the enemy ships in the following combat phase. Ships may end their movement at any time, or may elect to remain in their present hexes. Transport taker and mothership counters have no attack vectors and are thus not capable of combat. Ships jumping to hex containing only these types of ships may ignore them and continue to move. Those ships which stop to do battle must wait until the following combat phase. During the reaction movement phase, the phasing player may designate any 1 stack of ships, including any cargo already embarked, as his reaction force. A stack in any group of ships is in a single hex or in a single planetary surface box. This force may make up to 3 jumps, subject of course to all restrictions which apply to normal jumps. Ships in the reaction force need not all jump to the same destination. Refueling. All ships use hydrogen as fuel for their thermonuclear reactors. This may be supplied from the oceans of a habitable planet or from the atmosphere of a gas giant. presence of enemy forces does not prohibit ships from refueling the system. Refueling is therefore of minor importance under most circumstances. However, the two tertiary systems, Sirius and Eltar, cannot easily provide refueling opportunities. Ships jumping to either of these two systems are unable to refuel and thus may not jump out of the systems under ordinary circumstances. Tankers are capable of manufacturing fuel directly from stellar atmospheres. When such a ship moves into a tertiary system, it is immediately capable of refueling friendly ships, enabling them to leave the hex using hyperspace jumps. A tanker automatically provides itself fuel to leave the hex. Transportation is the means whereby non-ships, troops, and place outposts, planetary defense workers, and fighters may move through space. One counter, the cargo, may be carried by a transport. The cargo should be placed under the transport ship counter to indicate that it is being transported. Capital ship counters, M, B1, B, B2, and BB, may carry troop counters, but no other type of cargo. Each may carry one troop counter. Mothership counters may carry fighters, but no other type of cargo. Each may carry 3 fighter counters. Ships carrying cargo may always embark or disembark cargo in a friendly system containing a friendly world or outpost marker. A single transporting ship may not carry more than 2 distinct cargoes of 3 fighters, each in the case of another ship, in a single movement phase. When delivering a cargo in a non-friendly, not necessarily enemy system, the actual movement from space to planetary surface blocks must take place during the planetary surface space interaction subphase of the combat phase. In the reaction phase, starships transporting cargo may embark or disembark cargo, but not both. Such transports would necessarily be part of the reaction forces. Cargoes may not be transferred between ships in space. Another ship may launch and retrieve fighters while in space, but another ship may do so. When a ship is destroyed in combat, its cargo is also destroyed. Combat. Each combat phase consists of 3 subphases: along space combat, planetary bombardment, and planetary defense fire and surface combat. Space combat. Space combat is a series of combat rounds, each being an exchange of fire between enemy ships in the same hex and occurring during this space combat. Space combat usually occurs in stellar hexes, but may occur in any hex. Preparation. Each player prepares for space combat by laying out his ships. All ships, including transports and cargoes, in a blank area of the map or table. If another ship is present, it may launch or take on fighters at this time and at the beginning of each combat round. The phasing player is the attacker, his opponent is the defender. Each combat round consists of 3 segments: range determination, space allocation, and combat resolution. Range. Space combat occurs at one of 2 ranges. Long range allows use of only missiles in the attack. Short range allows use of missiles, but at a reduced factor or beams. Range for the first combat round is automatically long. To determine the range in each subsequent combat round, each player rolls 1 die. The player with a smaller force, the fewer ship counters present, not counting fighters, may add 1 to his die roll. The player achieving the higher die roll has the option of changing range. Such a change may be from long to short, or from short to long. If the range determination die roll comparison is tied, the range automatically remains the same in the current round and changes to the other range in the following combat round. No range determination is unnecessary in the second round. All starships in a hex are at the same range. All starships change range together. Starships belonging to one player may not occupy different ranges. Each player may decide to break off the engagement in any combat round, provided suitable exit row exists. Immediately after range determination, the player indicates that he is breaking off, and all the player's starships capable of hyperspace jumps must break off. Ships incapable of hyperspace jumps may and must remain behind and continue the action. See terminating combat. Ship allocation. After range is determined, players allocate their ships to specific attacks. The defender moves forward one of his starships, and the attacker allocates one of his ships against that ship. The defender then moves forward another starship to be masked by another attacking ship. This procedure continues until all defending starships have been moved forward, or until there are no more attacking starships. Extra ships at this point, unmasked defending ships or extra attacking ships, may be allocated to any enemy ships, doubling or tripling up for maximum effect. There is no limit to the number of extra ships which may be allocated against an enemy ship. Extra ships may elect to sit out of the combat round, being screened from fire by ships engaged in combat. After specific ships have been allocated, their types of fire are declared. The attacker first declares his fire options, such as beam fire, close range missiles, suicide attacks, high intensity fire, etc. The defender then declares any options he may wish and notes any defensive fire which has become available to him. The attacker then moves any defensive fire. The attacker then notes any defensive fire has become available to him by reason of the defender's fire allocation. Various fire options are detailed in the later section of this rule. Combat is then resolved. Combat resolution. During the combat round, each ship fires at enemy ship massed against it. Each starship may fire once per combat round. If more than one enemy ship is massed against a ship, may choose which one it fires on. To fire at an enemy ship at long range, a player notes the missile factor of his ship and the screen factor of the target. Space combat results table is then consulted. The proper missile factor row and screen factor column are located. At the intersection of the row and column is hit number required for the destruction of the target. Attacker then rolls one die and compares the result with the hit number. The result is equal to or greater than the hit number. The target is destroyed. You move from play. The result is less than the hit number. There is no effect on the target. Attack. Long range, an attacking ship may elect to use high intensity fire with his missile factor doubled. To fire an enemy ship at short range, the procedure is much the same, but more options are available, and beam factors are the primary weapons used. The attacking beam factor and the target screen factor are used to determine the record hit number. When die is rolled and the effect noted. At short range, a ship may elect to make a suicide attack, described below, getting a +1 die roll modification by first undergoing enemy defensive fire. Missiles may be fired at short range at half factor, rounded down, if the ship does not fire beams itself and survives all beam fire in the round. Ship combat is normally considered to be simultaneous within a combat round. All possible fires are made and destroyed. Starships are allowed to fire before being moved from play. High intensity missile fire. A starship may elect to expend its entire supply of missiles in a single attack. The ship's missile factor is doubled to a maximum of 12 and attack resolved. The ship, however, has then exhausted its missile supply and its missile factor is reduced to 0 for the remainder of the current combat phase. Short range missile fire. Missile fire at short range is made at half factor. Fractions round down. Firing ship may not attack until all beam fire has been resolved. Ships destroyed by beam fire may not fire missiles at short range. A ship at short range may elect to fire missiles and also to make such an attack at high intensity fire. Suicide attacks. Starships with beam factors may make suicide attacks if at short range. Before they first undergo defensive fire from the target. Suicide attacks must be declared before any combat occurs in a combat round. The attacker declares first, and those ships making the attacks may not themselves be attacked in this manner. Target of a suicide attack is entitled to defensive fire using beams at full factor or missiles at half factor, rounded down. High intensity missile fire may not be used in defensive fire. The target may fire on the attacker, and if it destroys the ship, the suicide attack is foiled and resolved. Suicide attacker is not allowed to fire at all during the combat round and is removed from play immediately. If the suicide attacker survives a defensive fire, it then attacks in a normal manner, but may add 1 to its die roll before comparing it to the required hit number. Normally, a ship may fire once in the fire round. If more than one suicide attack occurs against a single ship, that ship may make defensive fire once against each of the attacking ships. A ship which has made defensive fire has used its ability to fire and may not fire normally. Disrupted starships. Starships may become disrupted as a result of faulty maintenance. Disrupted starships subtract 1 from the die roll attacking. When a disrupted starship is attacked, the attacker may add 1 to its die roll. Disrupted starships may make suicide attacks, but may not conduct high-intensity fire. Terminating combat. Combat is ended in one of two ways, by the complete destruction of one side, or by one side breaking off the engagement. If one side is destroyed, the other player's forces have won, and the hex vector is now controlled by the victor. Either side may elect to break off the engagement at the beginning of the combat round and effectively surrender the hex in question to the enemy. All forces remain in combat for the current combat round, but may not fire. At the end of the round, all surviving ships capable of hyperspace jumps then jump out of the hex. A priority for jumps exists. If possible, a break-off jump must be to a friendly system, one jump away. with no enemy ships present. Failing that, the breakoff jump must be to an empty system, one jump away. If these two circumstances are not available, breakoff cannot occur. Ships which cannot perform hyperspace jumps, deep space combat. In the rare event that both sides have forces in an interstellar space X, the combat between them occurs in the combat phase which follows the movement of the attacker. Breakoff is not possible, and such breakoff becomes a duel to the death. General notes: no ship may fire more than once per combat round, except when allowed defensive fire. Several ships may not combine their fire against a single target. Targets each defend individually. Planetary surface-space interaction. After space combat, ships which are in possession of System X may interact with the associated planet surface box. If the planet surface box is already friendly, landings may be made. If the box is not friendly, not necessarily enemy, bombardment may occur. Planetary defense fire may be made, and landings then performed. Planetary bombardment. Ships may elect to bombard enemy forces on a planetary surface by allocating missile factors. Each enemy counter in the box is a target. More than one target may be attacked in a subphase, but no target may be attacked more than once. No ship may bombard more than once. Several ships may combine their missile factors to attack a single target. The missile factors allocated against the target are totaled and one die is rolled. This die roll is then indexed to the planetary bombardment table and the result is noted. 3 results are possible in the planetary bombardment table. No effect, target neutralized, and target destroyed. A neutralized target is inverted and remains so until the end of the player turn. It may not attack either with planetary defensive fire or against troops, but defends normally. A destroyed target is immediately moved from play. A target destroyed result, which is obtained against a world or outpost marker, is automatically altered to a target neutralized result. Planetary defensive fires. World outpost planetary defensive markers may fire at incoming ships and attempt to destroy them. Ships which have conducted planetary bombardment and ships wishing to land on the planetary service box must undergo planetary defensive fire. Each marker may fire at each incoming ship. For example, if planetary surface box contains a world marker and planetary defense marker, each would fire at each enemy starship which is vulnerable. Each firing marker fires once at each individual ship by rolling one die and consulting planetary defense fire table. If the target ship has a screen factor 7 or greater, add 1 to the die roll before consulting the table. The starships with a higher defense factor are less vulnerable to planetary defense fire. The die roll is then indexed to the table, and the column corresponding to the marker firing. The results noted. 2 results possible on the table. No effect and target destroyed. Destroyed targets immediately moved from play. Destruction of a ship also destroys any cargo it's carrying. Jump troops are capable of landing directly from space without being transported down by a ship. Such units are ejected into space by a transporting ship, and each is then subject to planetary defense fire individually. The ship is not subject to fires. Jump troops are treated for the purposes of planetary defense fire as having a screen factor of 7, and are thus allowed the die roll modification when landing. Note that planetary bombardment can destroy or neutralize planetary defense markers before they are able to fire, thus allowing the undisturbed landings by starships and troops. Surface combat. Surface combat is a series of combat rounds, each being exchanged of fire between enemy forces in the same planetary surface box and occurring during the surface combat subphase. Surface combat must occur in a planetary surface box. The phasing player is the attacker, his opponent is the defender. Preparation: each player temporarily moves his counter from the specific planetary surface box to make some clear area of the map or table. As done in the space combat, defender moves forward 1 troop counter. Regular jump troop. The attacker responds by matching this unit with his own troop counters. Procedure continues until either the defender or attacker has more troops available. Neutralized troops may be used by either player. In this procedure, they may be attacked, but may not themselves attack. If the defender has fewer troops than the defender may commit his excess troops against the attacking counters, doubling or tripling up or more for maximum effect. If the defender has fewer troops than the attacker, the defender may now move forward non-troop counters, planetary defense markers, ship counters, and let's see, world outpost markers, each to be matched by an attacking group counter. All defending counters not involved in this preparation are now considered screened and do not participate in surface combat anytime in its subphase. After each combat round, troops and other counters involved in surface combat may be reallocated as loss of carrier, but the screen forces may not participate in surface combat. Note this rule imposes a theoretical limit for conquest. A planetary service box cannot be conquered in one subphase if the number of attacking troops is less than the number of defending counters. Combat. Once units have been allocated, roughly in pairs, the attacking and defending counters are each allowed one attack, but non-troop counters and neutralized troop counters may not attack. They may only defend. Troop counters are each printed with a vector with which they attack and defend. Planetary defense counters defend with their printed vector of 2. All other counters, including starships, defend with a vector of 1. Certain worlds may have higher defense values. See the home world rule. Combat is resolved using combat differential. Each troop counter may fire at one or more of the counters matched against it, subtracting the card counters or counter's defense vector total from the firing troop's counter's vector. This result may be a negative number. Correct column of surface combat results table is noted. When dice rolled, the result is implemented. 2 combat results are possible in the surface combat results table. No effect. And target destroyed. A destroyed result indicates the target unit or encounter is removed from play. When a rolled counter receives the result as destroyed, it is instead neutralized. Rolled can never be destroyed as a result of combat. Combat is simultaneous. In all units firing must fire before any combat results are implemented in a combat round. Single unit may fire at once, some or all the counters which are matched against it. If several units are matched against one or more targets, they may sum their factors and fire on one target only. There is no requirement that all counters must be attacked or that they must attack. Each troop unit may fire once in a combat round. Defensive fire. Because jump troop units are only lightly equipped to enable them to jump, they are at a disadvantage when defending against regular troops. In a situation where jump troop attacks a regular troop, including situations where more than one counter per side is involved, but each side is using homogeneous forces of jump troops or regulars, the regular troop is allowed a defensive fire. If the jump troop is destroyed by defensive fire, it is immediately eliminated. It may not itself fire before being eliminated. Terminating combat. Surface combat is terminated while all combatant troops are eliminated. For the defender, this includes all committed troops, but not those forces screened with the initial preparation. If all attacking troops are eliminated, all other attacking forces, transports on ships, unplaced cargoes are also eliminated. Reaction combat. Certain restrictions apply to the reaction combat phase. Only those counters involved in reaction movement, single track allowed to move during the phase, may participate in the reaction combat phase. If those counters enter a situation where other friendly forces are also present, they may join the attack. Enemy forces present in such locations may defend normally by taking part in the action. Starships. Each starship counter represents the squadron of individual ships and exhibits a variety of characteristics and values. Each counter is marked with a beam, missile, screen factors, maintenance number, and an abbreviation for the ship type. Following ship types are available. Transport. TR cargo carrying ships capable of moving in placed outposts, planetary defense frigates, troops, and flare counters from place to place. One transport carries one counter as a cargo. Production cost 1 RU. Tankers, AO, are mobile stations capable of manufacturing fuel directly from stellar atmospheres. The tanker is required to properly refuel starships so that they may jump from tertiary system hacks. Though unrefueled ships could still exist such acts without sublight movement. Using sublight movement, production costs 2 RU. Scouts at sea are small, light armed ships. Production costs 1 RU. Destroyers are small fleet units designed for escort duty in limited independent operations. Production costs 3 RU. Cruisers encompass several types of ships, including light cruisers, strike cruisers, attack cruisers, and heavy cruisers. Cruisers form the major heavy fleet elements of any force due to their relatively low maintenance cost and high firepower. Light cruisers are the smallest of the cruiser type ships. Production costs 6 RU. Strike cruisers are characterized by high missile factors, lending them to a variety of missions, especially planetary bombardment. Production costs 10 RU. Heavy cruisers, are the standard cruiser type ship, exhibit a homogeneous beam missile screen armament. Production costs 12 RU. Attack cruisers, CA, are uniquely Imperial, featuring increased beam factor. Production costs 14 RU. The general class of capital ship includes dreadnoughts, proved dreadnoughts, battleships, monitors. Capital ships are each capable of carrying one troop counter as cargo and of ejecting jump troops for invasions. Capital ships are better equipped to defend against planetary defense fires because each has a screen factor of 7 or greater. All capital ships except monitors require 2 turns for construction. Monitors require only 1 turn. Dreadnoughts, abbreviation B or B1 for Imperial, are heavily armed and armored, cost 16 RU. Approved Dreadnoughts, B2, are evolutionary Imperial developments of the Dreadnought, cost 18 RU. Battleships are the ultimate in capital ships with the highest available firepower and armor, production cost 20 RU. Monitors are heavily armed ships and capable of performing the hyperspace jump. They may only move using sublight drive, with Imperial models concentrating on missiles and Terran models concentrating on beams. 1 Terran pattern monitor is available to the Imperial player should such construction prove in his interest. Monitors, because they do not have hyperdrive and because they are often assigned to the defensive outposts, may pay for maintenance when in a system with a friendly outpost rather than perform the die roll. Production cost 6 RU. Several special ship types perform a variety of missions. Missile boats are strictly Terran development, and missile boats are equipped with hyperdrives but do not have the endurance to allow sublight movement. Production cost 4 RU. Fighters are small craft designed especially for tactical combat. They are incapable of either sublight movement or hyperspace jumps, but may be carried as cargoes. Fighters require a base before they may operate. A base may be a friendly world or outpost, or it may be a mothership. Production cost 1 RU. Motherships are carriers capable of transporting, launching, and retrieving fighters for combat. 1 mothership can carry up to 3 fighter counters and can launch and retrieve that number per combat round. Disruption of a mothership also disrupts fighters that are aboard. Mothership may launch or retrieve fighters at the beginning of each space combat round. If fighters are being carried inside the mothership, they are ignored. If not being carried, each counter is treated separately. Fighters are not included in the production cost of mothership. Production cost 7 RU. Troops. Two types of troops available: jump troops and regular troops. Regular troops represent the ordinary military manpower which forms the soldiery of Terra and the Imperium. Each counter represents a force of about 1 reinforced division. Because regular troops organizationally include the firepower of heavy artillery, regulars are allowed a defensive first fire against jump troops, which are not so equipped. Jump troops are the elite of the armed forces of both sides. Each counter represents a highly trained, specially equipped division. They are characterized by high combat factors and jump capability. Troop units may be raised by paying the required RUs and placing the counter on the turn record chart to appear in the next friendly player turn. This specific counter and the specific strength is determined by placing all available counters of the correct type, jump regular face down, and randomly selecting one. Note that the strength of the unit does not influence its cost. Troops destroyed in combat return to the pool of available troop counters and may be produced through payment of the correct amount and use of the random draw. Troops are not subject to maintenance costs. Troops may operate only in planetary service boxes and perform no function while in space as cargo. Markers. 3 basic types of markers are available: rolled, outposts, and planetary defenses. Rolled markers are placed prior to the First War and actually change hands only under very limited circumstances. Rolled markers may not be manufactured, nor may they be eliminated as a result of combat. Adverse results may only neutralize them. Outposts may be manufactured and held in reserve until needed. At such time, each must be transferred to the correct planetary service box. An outpost does not become operational until all enemy forces in the planetary service box are eliminated. No more than 1 operational outpost may be present in a planetary service box. An outpost may be placed in a planetary service box with a neutralized enemy world and made operational, in which case the outpost denotes the current ownership and serves to keep the enemy world marker permanently neutralized. Planetary defense markers. Planetary defenses have a primary purpose of anti-starship fire. Because each defends in surface combat with a factor of 2, such installations also serve well as defensive ground forces. Planetary defense markers are manufactured and must be transported into place. Each becomes operational at the end of the player turn in which it is placed. Bookkeeping markers. Each player receives a black counter, which may be used in the turn record track to note the current turn. A blank counter. The Imperial player receives a glory marker, which should be placed on the black 5 on the research chart at the beginning. The War Peace marker is used to note the current situation on the War Peace chart. Economics. Income. Each player computes his income during his maintenance and production phase and notes a new balance in its resource unit chart. Computation of income occurs as the first step of the phase. Imperial income is based on the Imperial budget plus tribute from each connected outpost or world. See the Imperial income table below. In addition, the Imperial player may receive income as a result of Imperial intervention or as a response to appeals to the Emperor. Here's your Imperial income table per world, connected outpost budget. Terran income is directly based on number of worlds and outposts in Terran control. See the Terran income table below. Terran income, connected world, unconnected world, connected outpost, unconnected outpost. Know that the term world refers to a world marker of the correct player and placed in a primary planetary surface box. The world is connected if a path may be traced from it to Sol. This does not apply to Imperial worlds as they need not be connected. By any number of continuous jump routes, system hexes along the road must be free of enemy starships other than tankers or transports. Outposts are connected if a similar path may be traced to a friendly world. For a path to be traced through tertiary system hex, a friendly tanker must be present. Two systems, Main Star and LaRue, are not connected by jump roads. An outpost placed in such a system produces income as if it were a connected outpost. Maintenance. Each starship has a maintenance number, which expresses the unit's relative maintenance burden. Maintenance is a recorded operation for the phasing player during his maintenance production phase. It must be undertaken during each gain turn. Maintenance is of two types: civilized maintenance, performed on starships and systems with a friendly world, and frontier maintenance, performed in all of the hexes. Civilized maintenance applies to all starships in a primary system marked with a friendly world in a planetary surface box. The dealing player must expend RUs equal to the maintenance number of each starship in order to perform maintenance. If he chooses not to, the ship becomes disrupted. Ships in a location which requires civilized maintenance must perform it by payment of RUs. Maintenance and payment of necessary costs occurs before newly produced units appear and new production is initiated. Maintenance is not required for new units in the turn in which they appear. Frontier maintenance applies to all of the situations, including starships and interstellar space hexes and system hexes from the outpost, and system hexes with enemy worlds. The dealing player must roll one die for each starship. If the result is equal to or greater than the ship's maintenance number, maintenance has been successfully performed. If the system does not contain friendly outposts, the player must decrease the die roll by 1 before comparing it with the ship's maintenance number. Failure to make the throw indicates that starship is disrupted. Exception monitors exoplanar starships. A player of ships in the Nusku Dasham system and who controls both primary and secondary planetary source boxes may select the form of maintenance to be performed on his ships. Disruption is indicated by inverting the affected starship counter. Effects of disruption: starships which have been disrupted as a result of poor maintenance are hindered in their ability to conduct hyperspace jumps and to conduct combat. A disrupted starship must successfully roll its maintenance number or greater on one die before each hyperspace jump attempts. A disrupted starship in combat must subtract 1 from its attack die roll before consulting the space combat results table. Any ship attacking a disrupted starship may add 1 to its attacking die roll before consulting the space CRT. When planetary defenses fire on a disrupted starship, each may subtract 1 from the die roll before consulting the planetary defense fire table. Disrupted ships, which are otherwise capable of carrying cargoes, remain capable of carrying cargoes. Disrupted motherships may continue to carry, launch, and retrieve fighters. Recovering from disruption. A ship which has become disrupted remains disrupted until recovery can be accomplished. Recovery takes place during the maintenance production phase. In a primary system with a friendly world marked present, the disrupted ship must pay its maintenance number plus 1 in RU and becomes undisrupted immediately. In a situation calling for frontier maintenance, the disrupted ship must roll 1 die. If the result exceeds the ship maintenance number, the ship becomes undisrupted immediately. Ships may move to a location favorable to recovery. Production. During the maintenance and production phase, the phasing player removes newly produced forces from the turn record chart and brings them into play. He then expends the resource units to initiate production of other forces which are needed or desired. Costs associated with the various forces are shown in the production cost table. As the various ships and forces are purchased, counters for each are selected from the counter mix. Troop counters must be selected randomly and placed on the turn record chart. To appear in the next game turn, capital ship subtype B, B1, B2, and BB must be placed so as to appear in 2 turns. Newly produced forces may appear to any friendly world or any outpost connected to a friendly world. Starships may be placed anywhere in the system, in space, or in the planetary service box. All other forces must appear in the planetary service box. Outposts and planetary events markers appear in an unplaced state and may be moved to their ultimate location during movement phases. Imperial production restrictions. An Imperium prohibits initially the production of major starships, specifically CRCA B1, B2, and BB. They may appear only as a result of Imperial intervention, or after receiving permission from the Emperor to build such ships locally. All their ship types may be built without restriction. Imperial replacements. The Imperium lends its industrial might in support of local operations by replacing destroyed starships as time and facilities permit. At the end of each player turn, all Imperial starships, but none of their forces which were eliminated during the player turn, are placed on the turn record chart so that one will appear per turn. These starships should be placed inverted to know that they are Imperial replacements. While the Imperial player may select the order in which they are placed on the turn record chart, future losses to be replaced must be placed on turn. The Glory Index. The portion of the Imperium shown on the map is only in Imperial province ruled by the governor at Kashida. The provincial governor is simultaneously a person of great power and of great ambition. He is vitally concerned about the imperial recognition of his efforts and achievements to ensure his survival and to enhance the progress of his career. Glory points are recorded by the glory marker on the resource unit chart. Each game begins with glory of 5. Standard value changes occur in territories lost or conquered, as shown in the glory point table below. Loss -1, loss of world, loss of outpost -1, loss of world -4, conquest of outpost +1, conquest of world +4. All terms refer to the Imperial player, and only Imperial player receives or loses glory points. Glory point changes are noted immediately, but take effect at the end of each game turn. If an Imperial outpost is lost, or a Terran outpost conquered, if all enemy forces are eliminated from the planetary service box, including the outpost marker. It is not necessary for the attacking player to place his own outpost in the box. An Imperial world is lost, or a Terran world is conquered, if the world marker is neutralized and all other enemy forces are eliminated from the planetary service box. Because a world marker may not be eliminated, it must be neutralized. In order for the world marker to remain neutralized until the end of the game turn, the attacking player must maintain troops, at least equal to the counter's defense factor in the planetary service box. After conquest or loss has occurred, the world remains neutralized until the end of the game. Victory. Glory is the final determinant of victory. A high level indicates conquest and ample rewards to the Imperial governor, having achieved his goals to war ends. A low level indicates failure. The provincial governor, or perhaps its replacement, negotiates a peace quickly and quietly. If at the end of the game turn, the glory index has reached 0, the Imperium is defeated and the game is ended. If the index reaches 10 or greater, the war has ended in Imperial victory. Effects of time. The length of the war also affects glory. As hostilities break out, the size of the glory scale decreases. At the beginning of each turn, after the third, the length of the glory index is reduced by 1 on each end, i.e. on turn 4, the Imperium wins with 9 glory points, or loses with 1. Because the Imperium exists beyond the scope of this game, it is not shown. Each turn, during the Imperial maintenance and production phase, the Imperial player consults the Imperial intervention table, representing various random events which may influence the course of the war, and implements the result. At the same time, the Imperial player may choose to appeal to the Emperor for assistance and such assistance may be granted. Imperial intervention. To determine the influence of the Imperium on the game, throw 2 dice and consult the Imperial intervention table. Die roll indicates the result. Here's the table. Goes from depression, boom, succession, tension, frontier crisis, token reinforcements, maintain offensive, re-centralization. The following are descriptions of the results obtained. Depression. The Imperium is suffering from a period of decreased economic activity. Situation is evidenced by reduction of the provincial income by 10 RU. This reduces the total income, including outposts and world income, to 0 RU or less. Then the budget is 1 RU for the next 3 game turns. If a boom occurs in a depression, the depression is immediately cancelled, in addition to its other effects. Boom, the Imperium has experienced increased economic activity. This affluence is reflected in a temporary increase in the provincial budget of 10 RU for the current game turn. Imperial attention. The Emperor and his bureaucracy have fixed their attention on this province for the current turn. All glory point changes, gains and losses, but not expenditures for appeals to the Emperor, are doubled for this game turn. Frontier crisis. In military emergency in a frontier province, and the Imperium has created an overwhelming need for reinforcements. The Emperor has decreed that they'll be provided from the sector. Throw 3 dice. The result is a number of missile factors which must be committed. Starships totaling or exceeding the required number of missile factors must be sent off the map to Iskar, Gesser, Gitter, Kinur, or Dingur. These forces return on the second game turn following. Reinforcements. The Emperor has decided to provide increased forces in the struggle for the sector. For this purpose, the Imperial player throws 1 die, consults the reinforcement table to determine the value of the reinforcements received. The RU value noted is immediately available and is taken from the available Imperial inventories, thus there is no projection delay. No more than half the value noted may be taken from in non-starships, such as troops or outposts. No more than 1 capital ship may be acquired in this manner. Any RU received in this manner and not used are lost. Local RU may not be combined for this amount. Forces produced in this manner appear through Ishar, Dinger, Khmer, or Gishida. Reinforcement table. Die roll number of RUs. Token reinforcements. Roll 1 die and subtract 3. Result of 1 or less is treated as 1. Consult the reinforcements table and implement the result. Imperial succession. The Emperor is dead. Throw 1 die. Result of 1, 2 indicates that civil war is occurring. Result of 3, 4, 5, 6 indicates the possibility that some other event will occur. Roll again on the Imperial intervention table, increasing the 2 die by +3 before consulting the table. Implement the result. The contribution to a faction is computed in terms of missile factors. Each troop contributed is counted 2 missile factors. The Imperial player may elect to support either the insurgents or the loyalists, or may elect not to get involved. Throw 2 dice and consult the Civil War table. Index the die roll to the column corresponding to the faction supported. If the loyalist faction is supported, the die roll may be increased by 1 for each 20 missile factors committed to the cause. If the insurgent faction supported, the die roll may be decreased by 1 for each 10 missile factors committed. Note the result. If the insurgent faction wins and was supported by the Imperial player, the committed forces return in the number of turns indicated on the table. In addition, a cash grant equal to the value of the committed forces is made upon their return. If the faction loses, 1 die is thrown for each counter. On a result of 5 or 6, the ship returns to the map after 4 turns. Otherwise, the ship is destroyed and is not subject to replacement. If the loyalist faction wins and was supported by the Imperial player, the committed forces are returned to the map in the number of turns indicated. In addition, roll 1 die. The result is the increase in the provincial budget, effective upon the forces' turn. If the loyalist loses, roll 1 die for each ship. Each returns on throw of 4, 5, 6 after 4 turns. Otherwise, the ship is destroyed and not subject to automatic replacement. If a player's faction loses, the force commitments themselves are clandestine. Or if no faction support was supported, the provincial budget is reduced by 3 RU. If the reduction places the budget at 0 or less, the budget instead goes to level of 1. The Imperial player is not responsible for maintenance forces while they are committed to a faction and off the map. Civil War table. Mandated offensive. The Emperor has dictated that an offensive be mounted to the sector and has provided the forces to accomplish this operation. The Forces may remain available until turns in which the Imperial player fails to increase his glory point total. If any of the forces are destroyed, they do not return as replacements. Forces committed to an offensive are determined by the roll of the die, with the result indexed to the offensive force table. The offensive and the arrival of the indicated forces occurs at the beginning of the next Imperial player turn. Forces provided for the offense appear through Dinger, Canoe, Geshida, and Ishkur. They must exit to one of these systems. Potentially, the Emperor may order more than one offensive and provide more than one set of forces. In the event that some ships noted are not available, they do not appear. This is the offensive force table. Die roll and forces provided. The Imperial player is responsible for maintenance costs. Recentralization. The Emperor has expressed displeasure with the lack of centralized production of warships and rescinds all permissions currently outstanding which allow the production of ship types CRCA, B1, B2, and BB. Appeals to the Emperor. To place an appeal, the Imperial player must reduce his glory total by 1 and specify which of the two sections of the appeals table is being consulted. 2 dice are thrown and the result noted. A glory point may not be expended if it would place the total glory points at 0. Imperial's table. It's 2 sections. First section, increased forces for the appeals prohibited, etc. The other one is like increased finances for the appeals prohibited, a budget increase, and the other one is production. Grants of ships or RU are one-time events, which take place immediately. Budget increases are permanent. Acceleration of production moves all ships on turn record chart for 3 turns. Those which are then at the current turn appear immediately. Permission to build ships allows the Imperial player to construct using his own funds the type of ship. Such permission remains until rescinded. A prohibition for the appeals refers to all appeals in either section of the table for the duration of the war, but not necessarily the duration of the campaign. Wars and Peace. Imperium is intended to be a campaign game consisting of a series of wars fought till one side controls the other entire board. Each of these wars is a single game, with both players determine the length of the peace before the next war begins, and follow the procedure given here to determine initial forces and location of the next team. Succeeding games continue until the campaign is won. Length of the peace. Period of peace will follow the war. Roll 1 die, consult the length of the peace table. If an asterisk result is achieved, roll a die once more and ignore it for the asterisk and add that result to the first. The result is the number of turns of peace after the war. Die roll in turns of peace. Repatriation of forces. All troops and ship forces, except monitors and planetary defenses, are repatriated. They are merely returned to the owning player's home world. Their location has no immediate importance. In the procedure, any worlds or outposts which are neutralized at this point remain neutralized. Territorial exchange. Both sides simultaneously examine the map and remove any untenable outposts. Any outpost is considered untenable if it cannot trace the path of jump routes through systems free of unneutralized enemy worlds or outposts to a friendly world. Planetary defense markers and monitors present in a system with an untenable outpost are scrapped and removed from play. If the length of the peace exceeded 5 turns, any neutralized worlds which have an enemy outpost not previously moved because its position was untenable are now converted to a world marker of the opposite side. Neutralized worlds with no enemy outpost now become unneutralized. If the peace was 5 turns or less, it is possible for a neutralized world with an enemy outpost to be present into war income phase. Each player now computes income available for preparation. Loser of the war receives all accumulated RU in the resource unit chart at the end of the war, plus an amount equivalent to 1 full turn's income as normally computed. As of the instant the peace is declared, the winner receives his accumulated RU balance plus an amount equal to half of 1 turn's income. Post-war production. The items already paid for scheduled as replacements and on the turn record chart appear through the end of the turns of peace. Forces in excess of that point are scrapped and do not appear. Interwar attrition. During extended periods of peace, ships become old and planetary defenses fall into disrepair. Roll 1 die for each monitor, planetary defense marker, fighter, and troop counter. Consult the attrition table. If the result equals or exceeds the number indicated chart, the counter is eliminated through attrition. Here's the table. If jump troops suffer attrition, they are converted to regular troops rather than being eliminated. Starships, other than monitors and fighters, suffer attrition if each roll its maintenance number or less on one die. Specific roll is modified based on specific number of turns apiece. 1 turn plus 4, 2 plus 3, 3 plus 2, 4 plus 1, 5 or more, no modification to the die. The die roll for any specific ships may be avoided by payment of twice the ship's maintenance number in RU. Imperial favor attrition. There is a chance that the Emperor will draw permission to build certain ships. The Imperial player rolls one die. The following results indicate that permission to build a specific type of ship node is drawn, previously granted 1 CR, 2B1, 3B2, 4BB, 5 or 6 no effect. In war production, each player may commit his resource units to production forces for the upcoming war. Any normally available forces may be built. Capital ships are built, and the piece is only 1 turn long. New production will appear at the beginning of the player's first player turn rather than as initial forces. In war colonization, each player may place 1 outpost per turn of peace, provided the outpost was built during the war protection or is otherwise unplaced and unavailable. The winner places one of his outposts first. Then the loser places 1 outpost. Each placed outpost must be connected to a friendly world. At this point, a friendly outpost in a primary planetary source box may be converted to a friendly world marker if it has spent at least 5 turns apiece in that box. Redistribution of forces. All forces except monitors may be redistributed by both sides prior to hostilities. They may be placed in any system containing a friendly world or outpost marker. The winner of the war sits up the first. All forces automatically begin the game in an undisrupted state. Attack the next war. The loser of the previous war moves first. Then here's just the first war. I'll show that in setup. Optional rules. You can do home worlds. So the Terran world is Sol. The Imperial is Kashida. Home worlds of high population, sense of construction, capability, nurture, etc. Terraforming. You can basically take secondary worlds and make them into a primary world. Ship construction. And then there's restrictions to which Terran player ships can be built. Design credits. Mark Miller and the additional team shown here. So initial setup then. It goes by, as discussed in starting the first war. The First Interstellar War begins in AD 2113. The continuing territorial frictions between the Imperium and the small but growing Terran Confederation finally brings a small section of the galaxy to the verge of war. Terra, the Terran player, receives the forces noted in the Terran forces list as initial forces. World markers must be placed as noted, as must outposts. 3 in-place outposts may be used during the play as the Terran player sees fit. The remaining forces may be placed at any friendly worlds or outposts. Terran player sets up first and has the first player turn. Terran forces list, worlds at Sol, Alpha Centauri A and Alpha Centauri B. Outposts at Junction, Bernard Star, and Proxima Centauri, and then 3 unplaced outposts to be used later. Planetary defense markets 2, monitors 1, missile boats 1, scouts 6, destroyers 2, light cruisers 1, transport 6, regular troops 2, jump troops 1. So I tried to put the monitor here in the perimeter for this outpost. Kind of have troops kind of at the home world, have some defensive spaceships amongst the worlds. There's few enough worlds and outposts I'm able to kind of populate those. And then the Imperium. The Imperial player receives the forces noted in the Imperial forces list. Shown here. World markers must be placed as noted in Dingur, Yashida, and Ishkur. The 7 outposts are then placed in systems. After placement of the outposts, the remaining 3 world markers are placed. Care must be taken that all Imperial outposts and worlds are connected. The remaining forces may be placed in any friendly systems. So the other worlds are 3 of Nasku, Tau Ceti, and Epsilon Eridani. And then the outposts connecting them are Shala, Sagisi, Shulgi, Shulgith, Altmai, Erki Kalma, Sharupak. And they connect the routes. And then the Imperial forces, 3 planetary defense markers, 1 monitor, 2 scouts, 4 destroyers, 2 light cruisers, 1 heavy cruiser, 1 tanker, 4 transports, 3 regular troops, 1 jump troops. I found it difficult to be able to adequately cover all of them since they have more systems. So I put troops where I could, and then the others I try to put planetary defenses mainly on kind of the main home worlds. And then I dispersed the various spacecraft in defensive positions to protect the worlds as well. There's a tanker I got up here. Got some transports ready to go. So, it seems like I said, the Imperium's got more worlds, but their kind of forces are kind of more dispersed. So, and the glory marker starts at 5. So then we'll get into play. So starting the first turn here, in the first phase we're in the Terran player turn, the Terran maintenance and production phase. So first of all, we collect resources, and to do that, if we have connected worlds, it's 8 resource units, and we have 3 of those. If there's connected outposts, we get 1 resource unit, and we have 3 of those. So a total of 27 RU. Maintenance. So there's civilized maintenance, and then there's frontier maintenance. So civilized, you just pay the cost, and then frontier, you randomly determine if they're disrupted. First of all, Terran, we have in the worlds, which are Sol and A and B Alpha Centauri, we have 6 transports, 2 destroyers, 2 scouts. Transports are 1 RU each, destroyers are 2, scouts are 1, so a total of 12 RU. This will indicate that. And then, so the frontier, we have a few on the outposts, and we roll for those. You have to roll the maintenance score or higher to be okay. And for scouts and missile boats, the maintenance value is 1. So it can be worse of that if you go to ones that aren't in a friendly situation. But for our purposes, we would automatically get that, so we won't roll for that. But then we have a light cruiser here, and we would need to roll a 3 or better for that not to be disrupted. And we're okay, it's not disrupted. And then we have a monitor, which is a value of 3, and we need to roll 3 or better for that to be okay. But we don't, so that's disrupted. And you indicate that by flipping it over. And then we'll have to be successful another time for that not to be disrupted. And then we're also going to produce some units. So we have 15 left, and I kind of indicate it all here. And it shows the costs for different protections here. Gonna buy 1 destroyer and 2 regular troops. For the destroyer, it's 3, and then we put that on the next turn, so it'll come into play in that turn. Regular troops, they cost 2 each, so it's a total of 4. So actually it's a total of 7 for all of that. We draw the troops randomly from the mix because they have different combat values. So we'll draw 1, draw another. So those will come into play the next turn as well. And then we take out the cost for that. And that's that phase. So doing the first movement phase, I'm going to go and start trying to make this an outpost. So I'll bring cruise over here. This transport has regular troops on it, so I'll be jumping here as well. I'll bring the scout over as well to give them more support. That's the only movement I'll do currently. Then planetary surface interaction, so the troop will be unloaded from the transport. And then surface combat subphase, there's no surface combat. Then we get into the Imperial reaction movement phase. In the reaction movement phase, starships transporting cargoes may embark or disembark cargo, but not both. And then also there's no Imperial reaction phase, since those aren't involved in that. Then we go to the Terran second movement phase. And the only thing I'll do there, this transport over here, I had those 3 bases, or those 3 outposts. So I'll be moving this one over here, and then I'll be basically depositing this outpost in this world. And similarly, this transport has an outpost. Yeah, he'll be moving over here, so that in subsequent phases he can move that outpost around that area. So that completes the Terran player turn, then we'll get to the Imperial. So now we'll get into the first Imperial player turn. First sub-phase is Imperial maintenance and production. So as far as production, they get 10 RU from the Emperor, I assume. And then for each world they get 1 RU. For each outpost they get 1 RU. And they dispersed across here. They have 6 worlds. And then they have 7 outposts. So that's 13 for their worlds and outposts and 10 for the Emperor. 23 total they have to spend. So we'll indicate that. As far as maintenance, again, it's the civilized and frontier maintenance. In their worlds, they have 1 heavy cruiser, for maintenance, and then they have 3 transports, which each cost 1, and then 2 destroyers, which each cost 2, so a total of 11. So we'll reduce that from the Royal Treasury. So the frontier maintenance, they have transports which have maintenance factor of 1, so they're automatically okay. Couple scouts with 1, so they're okay. And then they have a couple destroyers that have a maintenance of 2, so they need a 2 or better for them not to be disrupted. So 1 is disrupted. The other one's okay. Light cruiser, which needs 3 or better. It's okay. It's not disrupted. A monitor needs 3 or better. He's disrupted. As far as production, they're pretty slim on having troops on their world, so they're going to purchase some troops. The regular troops cost 2 each. They're going to get 4 of those. So they'll deduct that. Randomly draw 4 units from the irregular troops. So you got a couple with high combat strength and some with less. And those will come on the next turn then for them. So they're in Imperium movement phase. So they're going to focus on going down here and fighting on this new outpost down here. So they're going to send several troops down there. These are connected, so. Now we're doing the Imperial space combat phase. So we're going to be doing the battle here. So bring the units to a space of the board. So we'll get into combat here. Allocate the units, and then decide what the range is going to be, short or long. So the winner, Terrans get to decide that it's going to be long range. So when you have long range, you have missile fire. So then they're all going to be doing missile fire, but he's going to be doing high intensity missile fire, which means he gets to double his missile factor. Then we refer to the missile combat results table. So first of all, we'll do these two. It's all simultaneous. The scout doesn't have missiles, so he's kind of out of luck there. And he's going to be doing high intensity missile fire. So his missile factor is 2, but he's going to double that, so now it's 4. And then he can't use any more missiles. And then we look at the shield or screen factor, 1 for him. So screen factor is 1, and then he has a missile factor of 4. So must be rolled or exceeded to destroy the target. So he does not exceed or meet 4, so they're okay. He's okay, and these two will do standard missile fire. So it'd be 4 to a screen of 4. 5 or better. Nope. Same with this one. Nope. He's got missile factor of 1 against a screen factor of 3. So he needs a 6 or better. Oh, he's successful. Somewhat lucky. Next round, figure out who gets to choose the range. Again, the Terrans get to choose, and they're going to go to short range now. In short range combat, you have a couple more options. You can do beams, or you can do missiles, but missiles are only at half power. And here, it's pretty straightforward because he doesn't have any missiles left, and he doesn't have missiles anyway, so. Then we look at the beam factor. 2 versus a shield of 1. 3 or better? Nope. Beam factor 2 versus a shield of 2. 4 better? Nope. Here, 2 to 4. Nope. And then he's got pretty good beams, so it's 5 to 3. Successful. Then we're staying at short range. At short range, the options are beam fire. They can still do missile fire, but their missile factor is reduced by half, and he's out of missiles. He doesn't use missiles. He's only out of 1, so they don't have a lot of missiles going on there, but that would be another. Another would be a suicide attack, but that would allow the other person to get fire, and he's got 2 to take out, and these 2 think they can do him, so they'll stick with beam fire. Again, it's 2 to 1. He needed a 3 or better. Takes him out, although he'll get a chance to fire yet. So he'll get a 2 to 2. And he takes him out. That's the conclusion of that battle. It's just a little snapshot to give you a sense of it. Then the remaining phases would be if the Imperial still units, though, he could potentially bombard the system, but he doesn't. But there's planetary surface interaction, surface combat, then the Terran reaction movement, or if they chose one stack to do reaction, they could. Terran reaction combat, Imperial second movement, Imperial second combat, with space combat, planetary surface, surface combat, some phase. Hopefully at least that'll give you a sense, a bit of it. That's Imperium from Game Designers Workshop, or GDW, 1977. It's definitely they started a lot of the concepts for board games, so I really appreciate that, and it holds up really well. Like I said, when I clip the counters, they actually work really well. Comes in a game board, which is nice. Everything's on the table there. I did find there's a lot of subtleties in the rules you have to be familiar with. The rules aren't like all written out on a handy reference. There's a lot of subtleties there. Definitely want to play it again, and hopefully you can get a copy out there. It's definitely a classic. I'd definitely one to have in your library if you don't have it already. Imperium, Empires in Conflict, Worlds in Balance, from GDW 1977. I'll give it a 8 out of 10. Thanks.